Hi, Randy Crabtree, host of the Unique CPA podcast and partner with Tri-Merit Specialty Tax Professionals. Here today to talk to you about a really interesting thing going on with the Employee Retention Credit right now. You know, the Employee Retention Credit's been around a while, we've been talking about for a while, but the biggest issue that's coming up right now, and you've probably even heard about it, is the income tax effect of claiming an Employee Retention Credit. This can be a significant burden to taxpayers, and we're going to tell you what you need to do or what you should do to avoid this burden on taxpayers. So here's what happens. I claim an Employee Retention Credit. Let's assume it's the year 2020 Employee Retention Credit. You can claim the Employee Retention Credit for the year, a big portion of the year 2020 and a big portion of the year 21. Let's assume right now, as I sit in May of 22, I just realized I can qualify for the Employee Retention Credit for the year 2020, and so I'm going to go back and I'm going to file amended 941Xs to claim an Employee Retention Credit for the year 2020. What IRS has come out with their guidance and said is I have to affect my income tax return. You have to reduce the expenses on the income tax year the year the wages were incurred or paid that were used for the Employee Retention Credit. So a 2020 Employee Retention Credit has to affect a 2020 income tax return. The problem with that is, if I'm sitting in the year 2022 right now, making this amended 941X for 2 or 3 quarters potentially in the year 2020, I have to now go amend that 2020 tax return, income tax return. And so what does that mean to me? Where's the burden in that? Well, what it means is, let's assume I have a $400,000 credit for the year 2020 Employee Retention Credit. Not an actually outrageously large number. These numbers grow very quickly. So $400,000 Employee Retention Credit in the year 2020 means I'm going to increase my taxable income in the year 2020 by $400,000. Let's pick a tax bracket of 25%. What does that mean to me? That means my income tax bill is going to go up by $100,000 in the year 2020. A tax return I filed well over a year ago in most cases. And now I owe this tax. I owe this bill. So IRS has come out in 2 places. IRS Notice 2021-49, which came out at the end of 2021, and again reiterated in IRS News Release 2022-89, which came out in April of 22. And in both of those, what they've said is, as long as you use reasonable cause and not willful neglect in reporting this additional taxable income, you will be able to request and receive penalty relief. So what is reasonable cause? That's the key. When do I make this amended tax return now? Because if I amend my tax return today and show that I owe $100,000 of additional tax, and I don't have that money, because in most cases, am I filing that Employee Retention Credit today as I sit in May of 2022, I very well may not receive those refunds till March of 2023. And now I have an increase in my taxable income or my tax bill of $100,000. Well, what we're saying you should do, and what I think the IRS will consider reasonable, is filing that return. Don't pay the tax unless you have the ability to, and if you want to, great. That's the safest harbor you have. You pay the tax, you get a notice, and you say, I didn't pay the tax originally because we didn't claim the Employee Retention Credit till year and a half after the income tax return. You're not going to have a penalty. Almost guaranteed you won't have a penalty. You'll be able to get that penalty notice, you'll answer it. But if I can't pay that bill right now, still file the income tax return within a reasonable time frame of knowing this additional tax is there. That's the key that you need to decide. What's a reasonable time frame? If I file the 941X today, should I amend that tax return today? Probably the most reasonable thing you could do. Probably the easiest way to show that you are going to be able to get rid of those penalties by quoting 2149 and 2289. Problem with that is IRS has had mistakes on the 941Xs. There's times where they've lost them and not been able to process them. There's times where they make mistakes on it and send you a refund amount different than you requested. There's things that are happening there. And so you have to decide, is reasonable the day I file the 941X? Is reasonable the day that I got confirmation by filing an 8821. I can track the progress of this 941X. Is the day that I can track the fact that I know they received it a reasonable time frame. Isn't a reasonable time frame the day I can see they processed it? The most reasonable is obviously the day you file the 941, file the tax return. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to get a notice. You're going to get a notice for underpayment of taxes. Who knows how long that'll take? 4 months, 6 months, 8 months down the road. Maybe at that point you've received your refund. So when you get that notice, you pay it, you quote the 2149 and 2289, and you say, hey, I'm asking for abatement of these penalties because of this situation. Should be fine. So if you get that penalty notice, and at that point, whatever, again, if it was 6 months down the road and you've received your refunds now, obviously go ahead and pay the tax and ask for an abatement of penalties. If you still haven't received your refunds on the 941Xs, respond to that notice again, quoting these two sources, and ask for that penalty abatement, and probably also set up an installment agreement at that time. By the time they process an installment agreement, most likely you will have received your refunds, and then when they respond to your installment agreement, you can pay the tax. Bottom line is, IRS wants to help you. IRS does not want to penalize you. Use your reasonable judgment to get these income tax returns amended or filed timely as quickly as possible. And if you need to avoid paying the tax for a while down the road, you'll be able to. We're going to continue to monitor the situation. Things could still be evolving on it. We may get more guidance from the IRS. So to keep up to date on that, please subscribe to our channel.